Hi everyone, Sean Healy, NLP trainer and change agent here, and welcome back to another episode on the Sean Healy Relationship Resourcing Series. Today's episode is another one of the conversation series, and of course I have with me my favourite conversation buddy, PJ, optimization coach and NLP master practitioner. So welcome back for another chat.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So today's topic is how do toxic people select their prey? That's what we thought we'd talk a little bit more about. In some of the episodes, we've touched on some of the areas that we wanted to in this very, very complex area. And we thought we'd, again, just approach the topic from a slightly different pathway to offer you more insight, you know, who to watch out for. And, of course, the series is about helping us have better quality relationships with ourselves and others. So away we go. In terms of where we're the flow of the kind of conversation today, do we want to kind of start with talking a little bit more about how more predatory, toxic people position themselves, and then head into the other side of the dynamic and how the two fit?
Sure.
Fantastic.
Sure.
So I guess if we're talking about some of the things that we're kind of looking at with people who there sometimes is a process for certain individuals where it's almost a perpetual, it's hunting season, and I'm always hunting prey. Would that be a reasonable kind of place to sort of start it off?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going through a process of selection at some level, and I've got my methods for testing who might be a bit more compliant, who might be more easily accessible, who might I be able to hook in with my charms and then get away with whatever it is that I'm planning to kind of do. So if we're thinking about that, if we talk about kind of toxic people and their approach to, let's say, dating or even in a business environment, what are some of the things that they're potentially looking for when they go into a new environment or they're meeting new people?
I like what you said there, that they're always hunting. And and I think it's twofold too, because you the ones who are wanting to avoid the toxic dynamic, need to be aware that if you have fallen prey a couple of times, it's probably because you are wearing a sign on your person that says, "Hi, I'm fresh, and I'm tasty, and I'm juicy, and there's plenty of me, and please help yourself."
Yep.
And I know that a lot of people who have been in that scenario feel as though that's happening to them. Like, what, do I have a sign on my head or something? Well, sort of. And it may not be anything you're doing, rather subtle cues of I guess, how you naturally operate that lends itself nicely to somebody to exploit. And so I think, yes, it's about recognizing that on the receiving end, that you are displaying certain things that make you more visible, more attractive, and kind of easy prey. And they're things that are usually parts of you that you and others love.
Mm.
And it's really around protecting that, to make sure that it's really only available to those who you trust and know, and that you're able to control who comes in and out of that experience. And so, as far as what they look for, it's a dance. It's a hand-in-hand dance. So it's signs that you portray is exactly what they're after, and the way that they look for those on the outside may be different to how they feel for you on the inside. So for those who are naturally inclined to be prey, on the inside it may just feel like, well, I'm just being me. Well, doesn't everybody do this? Isn't everybody accommodating and nice and go with the flow and 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 if someone really has a strong opinion, well, we'll follow their lead. And oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't want to upset you, and I don't want you to be angry. Look, let's just put our differences aside and move forward. And oh gosh, I never have an ill intent. Please forgive me. And and you're like, oh, this is just me being me. These are just nice people. They have these traits, right? And at the same time, on the receiving end, the toxic individual is seeing that as the sign that you're wearing, the advertisement that you're ideal prey. Because to them they see, okay, I'm going to get my way here. I'm going to be able to massage what I want most of the time and have the other person feel a sense of almost lucky to be in my presence, and go with what I'm saying and do the things I want. And actually that's not half bad. and they may see you play these out without even speaking to them. It may just come across in small behaviours, like we discussed on the flip side in earlier videos. So they're just as attuned to looking for these small signs as we're wanting to be attuned looking for them. And so it's really good to be mindful if you display a lot of these heart on your sleeve type behaviours, and also not to change them or remove them, but more so to know that and be grateful that you have those things, and have boundaries and be in control of when you do and don't display them and to whom you display them to. And usually within that you'd want to probably work on working some of the other muscles as well, of being a little bit indulgent sometimes with what you desire, which may feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, but what feels uncomfortable to you is probably somewhere that's really within the medium tolerable amount of healthy desire, and you may feel that it's all the way on the other end of the spectrum. Oh, I couldn't possibly pick the restaurant I want to go to tonight. And really, it comes across to you that way because you're so used to living so far in the other extreme. So there's a lot said there, but I guess to circle back to where we started, that yes, they're hunters and you are prey, and I think it's just as empowering to recognise how you are prey, and saying, okay, well, what do I have control over? And maybe I build a little shed, or I paint myself camouflage when I want to, to enable me to still be the way that I want to be, but with those whom I select to let in, and have a mechanism to throw a bow and arrow now and again if I'm under threat.
So I think that's good in terms of,
to go with the hunting analogy.
So the more recognition we have of predatory style behaviour, it's probably important to recognise here that if we tend to be moving about in the if I'm overly conscientious, if I'm overly responsible, if I'm overly compliant towards other people, and those are ways that I get along in the world, if I'm very, very likable, I'm very, very malleable, these kinds of things, which are beautiful qualities, and I'm very, very trusting. But there are other people who do not move around the world like that.
Almost naively trusting.
Yes, almost naively trusting. I trust everyone has a good intent. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. And so more education around being able to spot predators quickly, because if I'm a calculated predator, the last thing I'm going to do is telegraph that that's what I'm doing. I've learned to camouflage myself very effectively, to kind of keep your attention away from what I'm doing. There's a lot of charm, there's a lot of hook in, there's a lot of I'm somebody who presents very, very well, and because I'm already positioning things very, very early, I can already be playing metaphorically a game of chess with a specific agenda that serves myself from a very, very early stage. So, and of course, you're not. You're just showing up in the world, looking to get along with people and have greater connections and take people at face value. And sometimes that works against us. And remembering too that again, we're talking about people who are very, very skilled at getting us to drop our guard. And even if we do have a kind of a metaphoric gut feel that says, something's not right here, I'm very, very skilled at explaining that away or minimising what you think about that.
Or diverging attention.
Yeah.
Oh, look over here, big scary monster.
So, yes. Or I will play the victim. Oh, what are you saying about me? Yeah, and if you're somebody who's overly guilty, overly responsible, and not very, very comfortable with conflict, then you're going to back off, and that makes it easier for me.
I love what you said with back to the hunter analogy. I'm really loving that. But it can be, so like you said, it can present very differently. So they're very skilled at getting your buy-in. And sometimes they can pose as the wounded animal. And so you'll run across to save them and, Little Red Riding Hood, really, isn't it? Yes.
The wolf in grandma's clothes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't always show up as you would expect, and sometimes it can be hidden under a cloak of please help me. And they know how the natural tendency of the prey is, so they understand their ideal prey and definitely go to work on that.
I think that's a good one in terms of, and that's where sometimes self-awareness comes in, that if you're drawn to a project rather than an actual partner, then that we're certainly not. If you get hooked into these dynamics, we're not in any way, shape, or form. This is not blame. This is awareness. And like I said, this has nothing to do with your intelligence either. In fact, sometimes the more intelligent people are, the more likely they are to be hooked in. These are people who are expert at finding our weak spots and exploiting those, because that's probably appealing to the logic, and our big heart, so to speak. So the things that are customarily, as PJ said, our best qualities are the very things that they've learned to exploit and turn to their own kind of advantage. And if I'm overly responsible for things, then it's very, very easy if you start to blame me that I'll take on more than my fair share of that. Oh, you're right. That must have been something I did. Oh, yeah, I must have misinterpreted what you said, or sorry that I felt that had a bit of a malicious intent behind it. And here you are going, oh my God, how could you accuse me of that? So these types of, like I said, they're very good at the kind of the seek out the vulnerabilities and then twist to advantage.
Yes, and then further down that rabbit hole, the reasons, all the array of reasons they'll provide for the why they need your help and why they are the way they are. Oh, it's my upbringing, or this unfortunate event that happened. I was hard done by in this way or that way, and I find it hard to trust, or whatever it is that they are appealing to, and then really indulging and exploiting your kind nature in that, investing you and helping them to recover without any intent of changing, rather having found a valid excuse for continuing to stay the way that they are.
Yep. So, and again, I think if I'm an expert excuse maker, if I'm and again, sometimes this comes down to when we confuse the idea of competency and confidence. So I'm very good at sounding like I know what I'm talking about. I'm very good at sounding like the expert. That doesn't mean I am an expert. I'm just very good at sounding like one. So we're making the distinction between competence and an ability to appear confident, because I'm effortless at explaining away all the things you're subtly suspicious about. please. You know, the reason for that is this, or, oh, you're not one of those people, are you? I thought that I'd finally found someone who, so there's this expert turning it back on you. There's this, the effortless flow of excuses. If I need to lie, that doesn't bother me. Depending on how far down the kind of, predatory continuum I am, I can be very comfortable because if I have to lie, I have to lie, whereas people with a normal development of conscience and guilt, they're going to struggle with that. Doesn't mean we don't lie. Still, we do once in a while, but it's harder to cover up. It's harder to keep going without fessing up. But there are certain people that find it absolutely effortless to do. And even if they get caught, well, we'll just tell another lie.
Yeah, and as you rightly mentioned, they appeal to intelligent people, and when they do get to that point where, what if I get caught? They may say, I'll just tell another lie. And when that starts to get a little bit ridiculous, because sometimes it can be so artful, it goes on for years and years and years, that some will apologise, and they may, I'm so sorry, I'll make it up to you. And really the way that it always unfolds, or the way to track whether it's a sincere apology, is that generally, if it's a sincere apology, either the behaviour won't be repeated, or then some tangible effort that's externally verifiable will happen to suggest that they have rectified or attempted to rectify the situation, and that is absent. So it's an apology in order to slip out of the situation. It's an apology to get intimacy. It's an apology to get you back on side, to divert to then whatever the agenda is. But the last thing it's designed to do is to be a sincere apology, and the way that shows up is that it'll be forgotten, denied, and there'll be no sign of genuinely a follow through that would come from a genuine apology. And so, yes, I really want to express that the people on the receiving end of this shouldn't feel silly for being a part of it, because it is a very disorientating experience for someone who is well intended. And so, it's like being in a maze, and you're turning one corner, turning another corner, and you're keeping track of how to go back. But when you turn so many corners, which way did we come in from? And so destabilisation of the argument, because now it's an apology for the lie, to cover the lie. That was the distraction, which came from a diversion, which came from a misdirection that was a lie built on a lie, and this is the apology for that. And so good luck relocating that next time.
Yes.
And so very well-meaning, intelligent people can beat themselves up for having been, how would you say, lured? But it's a skilled operator that is driving that dynamic.
Absolutely. I think there's always just enough dose of hope and good in there, because again, if we just consistently met problem after problem, then we just give up. But it's the periods of challenge or pain are dosed with another period of uplift, maybe another period of hook back in, charm, and suddenly you're hopeful again that the person you first met is on their way back. And because the cycle has been through so many times and you're more and more depleted each time, it ends up almost being in quicksand. And as PJ said, if we're, part of the strategy is I want you to think if you just try hard enough, you'll change me, or you'll rescue me, or you'll save me. But the reality is I'm very comfortable with how the game is going, thanks. And whilst I tell you I want to play fairly as equals, I've actually, for the most part, got no interest.
Mm.
Occasionally, people can change from an up-down dynamic to an equality, but it's a very complex process. It requires its own, as PJ said, we need some sense of accountability in terms of, are you doing an abuser-based program? Are you being treated for narcissistic personality disorder? Are you being treated, because even to go to, let's say, for example, your partner masks this stuff under some form of addiction, being treated for the addiction is a separate thing. And then we go, well, if they only got sober, then they wouldn't be abusive. There are plenty of people who aren't sober who also aren't abusive. These are two different things, and they need two separate treatment programs to be dealt with. So sometimes people find much in distress. Their partner does get sober, and that makes them even more calculated and effective at twisting us inside out than they ever were before.
Yeah, absolutely. And returning to the how to become juicy prey, to your point before, they're holding on to that glimpse of hope. And it's one of the characteristics of someone they're looking for is somebody who is going to hold that that candle in the air for them, who is going to stick by them to the end, who is committed probably too much to making the relationship work. So someone who and is prepared to cross their own boundaries and put themselves second, and in order to rescue someone, or in order to, and as you mentioned rightly so, Sean, that they test these things by asking certain questions, and you wouldn't be the type to judge, I thought you were, and they sort of test your response there, and if you leap to justify how committed you are, then that, well, this is looking positive then, in terms of you showing up to be prey. So, so I think definitely that's a characteristic of someone they would go for, is somebody who is overly committed. We'll see something out through to the end. Loyal without boundaries. And sort of impressionable and naive in that sense.
Absolutely, yeah. You're too conscientious. They're not conscientious enough.
Yes.
You're too other focused. They're completely self focused. You've got an overly developed, over responsible sense of conscience, and they've got an underdeveloped one. And all these things fit very, very nicely. I'm willing to pick up the slack and take more blame than I should. I'm expert at shifting the blame to everybody else and ducking in any accountability, and I'm prone to over accountability. So the two tend to really kind of draw each other in and fit very, very well, yin and yang. But like I said,
in a bad way.
And this is not about, like we talked, PJ and I talked about at the start, this is not, this is, we can get aware of these things finally and go, oh my goodness, how could I, and how silly and how dumb and all that kind of stuff. And really what we need to do is, we have awareness. We need to really be in an extreme amount of self-compassion at the moment. Know that unfortunately this happens to a lot of people, and that we are talking about people who, you can see certain things but not be able to put them together the first or the second time through, and because of slight variations. So again, we're playing a different game, and we can get caught if we don't understand the rules, or we're playing an even more complex game than before. So this happens. This happens,
And what can we do about that? Is, as you said, you recognise that it's the extremes, and we're probably sitting here, and the toxic partner sitting here, and so one thing that's worth doing is just now and again, in private, practicing going to the other extreme, so that there is some sense of middle ground that is sort of further along that spectrum for you. So because that is a more balanced place to be, and your prey, because the way of that that way of operating isn't sustainable and there's not enough colour in it to, for you to be able to protect yourself per se in this scenario, but developing a little bit more range in those areas that you're sitting on the far extreme would be helpful for you to become less available as prey to these personalities too. Types of operators.
Yep. And the usual stuff, even though it might be very challenging, we're getting better at asking for what we want. We're getting better at expressing our needs. We're getting better at gently asserting our boundaries and saying no. And then even if that makes us wobble a bit and we go, oh my goodness, that we're sitting in that discomfort and we're working in that, and we've got good, we have got a broader support group too. So we're also not letting ourselves get isolated. So we've got nobody outside the dynamic who can be looking in going, hang on a moment, this is very lopsided. You're disappearing even further, and you were already a quiet person. Oh, fantastic. Now I get to monologue and dialogue and dominate the conversation. I take up very little energetic space. That lets you take up massive amounts. All these kinds of things where we start to go, well, I'm working on more even conversation. I've excelled at being a listener, but now it's I'm going to practice and sit in the discomfort of speaking more. And there's lots of other elements that you can do to start to work that through. But I feel like it's such a big topic. We might do a part 2 to this one, I reckon. So, because we're only just getting warmed up. But I hope this starts to give you, like I said, it's not the full picture, but hopefully this gives you at least a start to help you to become more informed around some of these things. And we'll look forward to having another chat about this and other things as well.
Awesome.
Fantastic. So, as always, thanks for joining me on the conversation episode.
Thank you so much.
Till next time, bye.